It is not the will of the Emperor that we should live in peace and harmony. It is his will that we should die in his name, and in the name of mankind die in the eternal war he has commanded us to fight. High Marshal Helbrecht. The universe is a tapestry of unending war, a canvas painted with the blood of trillions over countless millennia. In this age of darkness, every faction is an exemplar of extremism, every army a monument to zealotry. Yet even in this gallery of fanatics, one brotherhood stands apart, clad in the black of righteous fury, their devotion so absolute it borders on the sublime and the terrifying. They are the Black Templars. See them now on a nameless moon, its grey dust and shattered rock illuminated by the strobing chaos of battle. White-hot lances of energy tear through the thin atmosphere, impacting ceramite shields with concussive force. Mortar shells scream down, turning rock to slag and flesh to ash. A lesser force would seek cover, would establish firing lines, would fight a war of cold, calculated attrition. But these are not lesser men. They are Astartes, and they are Templars. From the shuddering heart of a Land Raider Crusader they emerge. Not in a measured advance, but in a torrent of black and white armor. Their bolters roar, spitting explosive death into the ranks of the alien foe. But this is a mere prelude. For the true expression of their faith is not found at a distance. It is found in the crucible of melee. With a synchronized war cry that is half prayer, half bellow of pure hatred they charge. They leap over craters that would swallow a mortal man, their power armor whining with the strain. They ignore the incoming fire, each impact a percussive beat in the hymn of war they sing. The red eye lenses of their helmets, glowing like embers in the gloom, are fixed upon the enemy. There is no strategy here save for total annihilation. There is no tactic save for the headlong, unstoppable advance. The air fills with a mechanical snarl, a sound that promises brutal finality, the revving of 100 chainswords. The Templars hit the enemy line, not as a wave, but as an asteroid strike. Adamantium teeth chew through Xeno's flesh and bone, casting arcs of alien gore into the air. Power fists crush torsos in sprays of viscera. Thunderhammers fall each blow, a crack of doom that liquefies whatever it strikes. And through it all, their voices rise in catechisms of hate, their battle chaplains chanting litanies of fury, their very presence a force of uncompromising faith. They are relentless. They are without mercy. They are magnificent and they are monstrous. To understand the Black Templars is to understand the very nature of the crusade within the Imperium of man. For most Space Marine chapters, a crusade is a specific declared war, a campaign with a beginning and an end, a goal to be achieved before returning to their fortress monastery. It is a tool, a means to an end. But for the Black Templars, this is a fallacy. For them, the crusade is not a mission. It is their very state of being. It is a perpetual, unending, all-consuming, holy war that has lasted for 10,000 years. They are born into it, they live for it, and they will die in it. They have no home world to return to, no fortress to garrison. Their only home is the deck of a warship, their only purpose, the prosecution of the next battle. This raises the central question, the driving mystery behind their sable armor and burning zeal. In a galaxy already defined by total war, why this endless self-imposed exile into conflict? What singular event, what profound belief could compel a brotherhood of transhuman warriors to wage a war that can never be won, only fought? For these champions of the faith, the crusade is not a duty. It is their very soul. To comprehend them, we must not look to the myriad battles they fight in the present. We must look back across 10 millennia of slaughter to a single vow forged in the dying embers and bitter ashes of history's greatest betrayal. That betrayal has a name, the Horus Heresy, and those ashes were the very soil of humanity's throne world terror. To understand the vow, one must first walk through the graveyard of 1 billion dreams that was the Imperial Palace in the aftermath of the siege. The war was over. The traitor legions were broken and scattered, their war master slain. Victory had been achieved. But this was a victory that tasted of ash and smelled of death. The air itself was a shroud, thick with the smoke of continent-spanning pyres and the dust of pulverized marble. The once golden spires of the palace, marvels of engineering and artistry that had touched the heavens, were now jagged teeth biting at a poisoned sky. Colossal statues of heroes and primarchs lay toppled, their stone faces staring with blind indifference at the ruin they once oversaw. For thousands of miles in every direction, the landscape was a churned grey wasteland of rubble craters and the skeletal remains of war machines. For the loyalist Astartes who walked these ruins, especially the Imperial fists, this was not a victory parade. It was a funeral procession. Every shattered wall, every scorched bastion was a personal wound. They were the Emperor's Praetorians, the architects and guardians of this fortress world. They had held the line for months against impossible odds, their golden armor stained black with grime and their own brother's blood. They had won. But as they gazed upon the Sanctum Imperialis, now a broken tomb, they felt an unbearable, crushing weight. It was the weight of guilt. A guilt that they had been breached. A guilt that their master had been forced to pay the ultimate price for their failure to hold the final gate. This pervasive sense of loss, this profound sorrow created a void in the soul of the victorious legions. At the heart of this storm of silent grief stood their gene-father, the Primarch Rogel Dawn. Clad in his auric plate itself, a testament to the battle's ferocity, with its network of cracks and craters, he was a statue of pure, unyielding sorrow. For weeks he stood vigil, a silent giant amidst the wreckage of his life's work. Dawn, the master of the siege, the unbreachable defense, the Praetorian of terror. His entire existence had been dedicated to fortification, to resilience, to holding the line. And in the final, most crucial hour, the line had broken. Outwardly, he was stone. He issued orders for reconstruction, for the re-establishment of defenses, his voice as level and hard as granite. But within the Primarch, a tectonic shift was occurring. His unwavering belief in logic in stone and steel had been shattered. Defense had failed. Fortification had proven insufficient. His grief was not the fiery rage of some of his brothers. It was a cold, dense singularity of pain, a deep and abiding agony born from a perceived failure in his most sacred duty. He had not protected his father, the Emperor of mankind. This agony, this cold, hard kernel of failure lodged in the heart of the Imperial fists, would become the fertile ground upon which the most extreme, most uncompromising form of faith would grow. A faith that decided if a fortress could not guarantee salvation, then salvation could only be found in a relentless, punishing, and eternal attack. From this soil of grief, a different kind of seed began to sprout, watered by a righteous and incandescent fury. It found its home in the heart of First Captain Sigismund, the greatest warrior of the Imperial fists, and perhaps of all the legions Astartes. Before the heresy, Sigismund was known as the Emperor's champion, a peerless duelist whose skill with a blade was a form of lethal poetry. His loyalty to the Emperor and his Primarch was absolute, but unlike the stoic, measured devotion of his brothers, Sigismund's was a burning, passionate thing. Where his brothers saw walls to be built and strategies to be enacted, Sigismund saw only the enemy and the righteous path that led directly to their destruction. The heresy did not temper this fire, it turned it into an inferno. The betrayal of Horus did not fill him with sorrow alone. It filled him with a seething, bottomless rage that demanded an outlet. For him, the traitors were not merely a defeated foe. They were a blasphemy that continued to exist, a stain upon reality that had to be scoured with blade and fire until not even their memory remained. While Rogel Dawn wrestled with the cold calculus of his failure, Sigismund paced the broken halls of the palace like a caged predator. He could not stand the silence, the dust, the methodical work of rebuilding. To him, every moment spent on Terra was a moment the traitors were allowed to live, to fester in the darkness of the galaxy. This burning need for action finally led him to his Primarch. He found Dawn standing before a chasm that had once been a glorious starport, his gaze lost in the desolation. The conversation that followed was not one of comfort, but of a fundamental schism in philosophy. Dawn spoke of the future of rebuilding the Imperium's defenses, of ensuring Terra would never again be threatened. He spoke of duty, of order, of the slow, arduous task of healing. Sigismund would have none of it. He saw no honor in masonry, no victory in garrison duty. "We have failed, my lord," he said, his voice a low growl of contained fury. "We failed him. We stood behind walls of stone and steel, and still he was struck down. There is no penance to be found in laying new stone upon old. There is no atonement in waiting for the enemy to return." Dawn turned his weary eyes, seeing the unquenchable fire in his first captain. He saw a warrior who could never again know peace, a soul for whom the only prayer was the song of a chainsword. He saw the path for all those within his legion who felt as Sigismund did, that the only true way to honor the Emperor's sacrifice was not to defend his tomb, but to avenge his death across the stars. "What then is your path?" son Dawn asked, already knowing the answer. Sigismund did not reply in words. He led his Primarch to the very heart of the palace, to the great sealed doors of the Sanctum Imperialis. There, before the entrance to the golden throne room, where the broken body of the Emperor now sat in its arcane life support machine, Sigismund knelt. He unbuckled the black sword from his waist and laid it on the marble floor before him. This was not a report from a captain to his commander. This was a confession before a dying god. Looking upon the unyielding adamantium of the doors, as if he could see through them to the master of mankind, he spoke the words that would echo for the next 10,000 years. "I have failed in my duty to protect you," he began, his voice thick with a warrior's shame. "For this failure I shall seek no rest. I swear upon my honor and my blade that my life will be an endless atonement. I will hunt the traitor, the heretic, and the alien to the furthest corners of existence. My feet shall never again grace the sacred soil of Terra. We shall build no fortress to hide behind. Our fortress shall be our faith, and our home shall be the prow of a warship. We shall not be defenders of the Imperium, we shall be its wrath. This I swear. Let my crusade be my penance. Let our war be our prayer. We shall not cease until every foe is vanquished and the galaxy is cleansed by fire. This is my eternal vow." In that moment, in that sacred, terrible place, the Black Templars were truly born. Not by decree or by restructuring, but by a single uncompromising oath of eternal vengeful war. In the wake of the heresy's apocalyptic destruction, the Imperium was forced into a painful self-reflection. The question on every High Lord's mind was a terrifying one. How could this be prevented from ever happening again? The answer came from the pragmatic mind of the returned Primarch Robute Guilliman. His solution was a tome that would redefine the structure of the Adeptus Astartes for the next 10 millennia, the Codex Astartes. It was a masterpiece of military doctrine, logistics, and strategy, but its most crucial and most controversial decree was the second founding. The Legion's vast armies of tens of thousands of Space Marines loyal to a single Primarch were to be no more. In their place, smaller, more flexible forces of 1,000 warriors called chapters would be created. Never again would one man hold so much power. It was a law born of fear and logic, a cage designed to contain the very power that had almost torn the galaxy asunder. For Rogel Dawn and Sigismund, this decree was not a sign of prudent wisdom. It was a profound insult. They stood amidst the ruins of a galaxy still teeming with enemies, the scattered but vengeful traitor legions, the ever-present threat of the Xenos. the insidious whispers of chaos. For Dawn, whose entire life had been a testament to overwhelming strength and unyielding defense, the idea of intentionally shattering his legion of parceling out his strength into smaller, weaker formations was a strategic absurdity. It was a declaration of weakness at a time when only absolute strength could guarantee survival. It felt like a betrayal of every warrior who had fallen defending Terra. For Sigismund, the Codex was even worse. It was a blasphemy against his sacred vow. His oath was one of eternal galaxy-spanning war. How could such a crusade be prosecuted by a mere 1,000 Marines? The Codex dictated force dispositions, strategic limitations, and defensive postures. It was a document of restraint and control. Sigismund's vow was one of unrestrained, righteous fury. The Codex Astartes was a chain, and he could not allow his holy mission of vengeance to be shackled by rules written in fear. He and those who followed him saw punishment, not defense, as their calling. They did not want to garrison worlds, they wanted to purge them, and so a moment of quiet rebellion occurred, sanctioned by a grief-stricken Primarch who understood the fire in his sons' hearts. Rogel Dawn, ever the loyalist, would officially accept the Codex Astartes and divide his imperial fists. But he would also honor the vow his first captain had sworn before the Emperor's throne. He named Sigismund the first High Marshal of the Black Templars. He gathered to him all the like-minded warriors of the Legion, the most zealous, the most aggressive, those whose faith burned brightest and hottest. They were not formed as a static, Codex-compliant chapter. They were officially sanctioned as an eternal crusading fleet. This was Dawn's brilliant, sorrowful compromise. By being a crusade, they were freed from the restriction of owning a single home world. Their operational territory was not a sector, but the entire galaxy. Their mission was not defense, but the endless prosecution of war as sworn by their founder. Sigismund, now at the head of a formidable fleet, led his black-clad brethren away from the light of terror, never to return. They were no longer simply the sons of Dawn. They were the Emperor's wrath given form a chapter in name, but a holy crusade in soul and in deed, unbound by any law save for their own terrible sacred oath. A chapter must have a home world, a fortress monastery, a bastion of stone and iron from which to draw its strength and its recruits. So dictates the Codex Astartes, and so it is that the Black Templars have none of these things. For them, a planet is an anchor, a vulnerability. To build a fortress is to admit the possibility of a siege, to concede that defense is a worthy endeavor. This is an idea their very souls reject. Sigismund's vow was a promise of perpetual motion of eternal pursuit. A home was a luxury they had sworn to forego, a chain they had cast off when they departed from Terra. Their fortress is not built of rockreet and plasteel, but of ceramite and adamantium hulls that glide through the cold void. Their monastery is not a silent spire on a distant moon, but the echoing vaulted chambers of a battle barge. Their home is the fleet. At its heart is a vessel of legendary status, a relic from the Great Crusade itself, the Eternal Crusader. This Gloriana-class battleship, a mobile continent of guns and chapels, serves as the spiritual and operational nexus of the entire chapter. Within its armored skin are forges that can craft a suit of power armor, scriptoriums, that hold 10 millennia of battle history and sanctums where new neophytes take their first oaths of service. It is a wandering piece of the Emperor's fury, a self-contained engine of war and faith, and it has not known a home port in 10,000 years. This rejection of a central base necessitates a unique command structure, one that allows the Black Templars to fulfill their galaxy-spanning vow. The chapter does not operate as a single monolithic entity. Instead, it is divided into a multitude of crusading fleets, each a self-sufficient fighting force. Some may be vast armadas numbering dozens of capital ships and thousands of warriors, while others may be a mere handful of strike cruisers and a few hundred Astartes. each fleet is commanded by a marshal, a veteran warrior given near total autonomy to wage his own crusade in the Emperor's name. It is this structure that makes the Black Templars seemingly omnipresent. While the Ultramarines are guarding Ultramar and the Imperial Fists are defending the Sol system, the Black Templars are everywhere. A crusading fleet may be purging orcs on the eastern fringe, while another is battling a chaos incursion near the Eye of Terror, and a third is answering a distress call from a forgotten world in the galactic core. Yet they are not a fractured brotherhood. When a threat arises that is too vast for any single fleet to handle, a new Warg, a Tyranid splinter fleet, a black crusade boiling out of the warp, the call goes out. A summons carried on astropathic waves, spoken by the will of the High Marshal, the inheritor of Sigismund's command. From across the boundless dark, the marshals will heed the call. The scattered fleets will change course, their plasma drives burning bright as they converge on a single doomed star system. What were once dozens of independent crusades will coalesce into one of the most formidable fighting forces in the Imperium. 100 scattered sparks converging into a single raging inferno. This unique fluid structure is not merely a tactical choice, it is the physical embodiment of their oath, a weapon perfectly forged for an eternal war. For a crusade to last 10,000 years, it requires more than just ships and guns. It requires a structure of faith, as unyielding as adamantium, a hierarchy designed not for governance, but for the perfect and perpetual application of righteous violence. The Black Templars' command structure is a reflection of their singular purpose. At its apex stands the High Marshal, a title that carries the weight of a 10-millennia-old vow. He is not merely a chapter master, he is the spiritual and military successor to Sigismund himself. He is the guardian of the vow, the focal point of the entire crusade. It is his voice that can unite the scattered fleets into a single unstoppable tide of fury. To be a High Marshal is to bear the burden of an eternal war, to see the galaxy not as a home to be protected, but as an endless list of enemies to be slain. Beneath him serve the marshals, the commanders of the individual crusading fleets. Each is a master strategist and a warrior of immense renown, granted the sacred duty of carrying the Emperor's wrath to some dark corner of the galaxy. They operate with near-complete autonomy, for the crusade is too vast to be micromanaged, but they are all bound by the same oaths and answer the High Marshal's call without question. Surrounding the High Marshal, and often dispersed among the fleets to serve as exemplars of the faith, are the Sword Brethren. These are not merely veterans or a first company in the Codex sense. They are the very soul of the Black Templars' martial creed made manifest. Each sword brother is a warrior who has walked the path of the Crusader for centuries, his skill in combat honed to a razor's edge, his faith calcified into an unbreakable shield. They are the keepers of the chapter's most sacred relics, the wielders of its most potent weapons. To the younger Templars, they are living saints of battle, icons of devotion, whose presence on the battlefield is a guarantee that the line will never break. To become a sword brother is the highest honor a Templar can achieve, a recognition that he has transcended the role of a soldier and has become a living weapon of the Emperor's judgment. They are the High Marshal's wrathful right hand and the unshakable core of any Templar battle line. Yet the strength of the chapter is not forged at the top, but at its very foundation in its unique and brutal method of recruitment and training. The Black Templars do not have a scout company in the traditional sense, where aspirants are trained apart from the main body of the chapter. Their method is far more intimate, more immediate, and infinitely more dangerous. A prospective warrior and neophyte is not sent to a barracks. He is assigned directly to the care of a full-fledged battle brother, an initiate. He becomes his tutor's squire. The initiate is not just a teacher. He is a master, a mentor, and a spiritual guide. The neophyte learns not in simulated training cages, but in the bloody maelstrom of active war zones. He maintains his initiate's war gear, he listens to his initiate's prayers, and he fights at his initiate's side. he witnesses firsthand the faith and fury required to be a Templar. This master-apprentice relationship forges a bond of loyalty that transcends mere discipline. It is a sacred trust. The initiate is responsible for the neophyte's soul, ensuring that the boy is tempered by war, not broken by it. The neophyte in turn offers his master absolute fealty. It is in this crucible where death is a constant companion and faith is the only armor that matters, that a boy is reforged into a Black Templar, his loyalty absolute and his hatred pure. If the structure of the Black Templars is its skeleton, then their ideology is the fanatical burning soul that animates it. To understand their actions, one must first understand their creed, a set of beliefs so absolute and uncompromising that they make even other Astartes seem moderate. This philosophy is perfectly encapsulated in their most famous battle cry, a tripartite mantra of pure weaponized faith. No pity, no remorse, no fear. This is not mere battlefield posturing. It is the core of their being. No pity, for pity is a weakness reserved for the innocent, and in the eyes of a Templar, any who stand against the Emperor, be they alien, heretic, or mutant, have forfeited all claims to innocence. Their existence is a blight to be cleansed. No remorse, for remorse implies doubt, a questioning of one's actions. A Templar's actions are guided by divine certainty. To regret the purging of a heretical city is to regret the will of the Emperor himself, an unthinkable blasphemy. Every trigger pull, every sword swing is an act of holy affirmation. No fear, for fear is the root of hesitation, the seed of heresy. They believe the Emperor protects them, that their faith is a shield more potent than any ceramite. To feel fear is to lack faith, and to lack faith is to be damned. Central to this creed is a deep, abiding hatred for the unsanctioned psyker, the mutant, the witch. This is not the standard imperial prejudice. It is a visceral theological loathing. It is a scar left upon their soul by the Horus heresy. They believe with every fiber of their being that the fall of Horus, the corruption of the traitor legions, and the near death of the Emperor were all made possible by the foul sorcery of the warp. Witchcraft is the ultimate heresy, the gateway through which the great enemy whispers its lies and extends its corrupting touch. This hatred is so profound that it shapes their very chapter organization. Unlike almost every other Space Marine chapter, the Black Templars maintain no librarius. They refuse to field psykers in their own ranks, viewing the channeling of warp energies, no matter how sanctioned or controlled, as a mortal peril not worth the strategic advantage. They would rather face a Titan with chainswords than trust a single librarian to stand in their lines. To them, the witch is a cancer, and the only cure is the cauterizing flame. This unshakable faith is woven into every aspect of a Templar's existence through constant ritual and symbolism. They are a chapter perpetually at prayer. Litanies of hatred are chanted during battle, hymns of vengeance are sung in the holds of their warships, and every meal is preceded by oaths of fealty to the master of mankind. Their very war gear becomes a physical testament to their beliefs. A Templar will often attach his weapons to his gauntlets with heavy adamantium chains. This is not for practicality, but as a potent symbol. It represents the chains of duty that bind them to the Emperor, a physical reminder that they can never lay down their arms, that their weapons are an extension of their will, and their will belongs to him alone. They adorn their armor not just with the skulls of their enemies, but with purity seals, holy scriptures, and votive candles. Their warplate is not merely a suit of armor, it is a mobile shrine, a walking reliquary dedicated to the glory of the God Emperor. For the Black Templars, the distinction between war and worship does not exist. Every battle is a sermon, and every enemy slain is an offering laid at the Golden Throne. Within the rigid faith-bound hierarchy of the Black Templars, there exists a role that is not a permanent rank, but a sacred temporary mantle bestowed by divine will. It is a position of ultimate honor and almost certain death, This is the Emperor's champion. On the eve of a great battle, as the assembled battle brothers kneel in silent prayer and meditation, one among them will be touched by the divine. It is not something that can be earned through valor or sought through ambition. It is a calling, a holy and terrifying visitation. A Templar deep in his trance-like prayers will be overcome by a vision. He does not see a clear image of the Emperor on his golden throne, but experiences his presence as a tidal wave of pure golden light, a feeling of immeasurable power, and a wrath so profound it threatens to scour his soul clean. In this sacred communion, a singular unspoken command is given. The warrior awakens not with fear, but with a terrifying clarity of purpose. He knows he has been chosen. He presents himself to the reclusiarch and the chaplains, who see the divine spark still shimmering in his eyes and recognize the Emperor's mark upon his soul. Once the divine selection is affirmed, a solemn ritual begins. The chosen warrior sheds his own identity, his name, and his rank. He is no longer Brother Sergeant Gerhardt or Initiate Kyle. He is simply the Emperor's champion, a living vessel for his master's fury. He is led to the chapter's reclusium, where he is vested in the sacred war gear of his new office. First is the armor of faith, a suit of master-crafted artificer armor, ancient beyond measure. Every plate is inscribed with the names of the champions who wore it before and the litanies of their glorious deeds. It is said that the faith of its past wearers has imbued the ceramite with a holy resilience that can turn aside blows that would fell a lesser warrior. Then the chaplains bestow upon him the Black Sword. It is not a subtle weapon. It is a massive two-handed power sword, its casing the color of polished jet that hums with a barely contained energy. This is a blade sanctified for a single purpose: to slay the great foes of mankind. It has tasted the black blood of demon princes, severed the heads of orc war bosses, and shattered the blades of heretic lords. To wield it is to wield a fragment of the Emperor's own judgment. Clad in these holy relics, the Emperor's champion has only one mission, a duty both simple and monumental. He is absolved of all other strategic concerns. He does not lead squads, capture objectives, or hold defensive lines. His task is to carve a bloody path through the heart of the enemy army, ignoring the rank and file, seeking only one target, the enemy commander. He is a holy assassin, a guided missile of faith and fury programmed to seek and destroy the head of the serpent. The very existence of this role is a testament to the core tenets of the Black Templars' philosophy. It is the ultimate expression of their belief in divine intervention that the Emperor himself will choose a warrior to act as his hand in the most critical hour. And it is the ultimate glorification of melee, a belief that the true measure of a war is decided in the crucible of single combat, where faith and martial skill are the only currencies that matter. The champion goes into battle expecting to die, but to die in a blaze of glory, taking the enemy's master with him. He is the chapter's faith made, manifest a single warrior against a world armed with nothing but a holy blade and the wrath of a god. If the Black Templars' creed is a theory of war, then the Third War for Armageddon was its most brutal and spectacular proof. The hive world of Armageddon, a soot-choked engine of Imperial industry, had become the personal playground of the greatest orc war boss the galaxy had seen in millennia, the self-proclaimed prophet of the Wee Gazkul Maguruk Thraka. His invasion was not a raid or an incursion. It was a species-level migration, a green tide of unimaginable scale that crashed against the planet's defenses, threatening to drown it in a sea of violence and scrap metal. This was a war that required more than strategy. It required a miracle. It required a faith as savage and unyielding as the enemy's own bloodlust. The call went out. From the bridge of the Eternal Crusader, High Marshal Helbrecht, a warrior whose personal hatred for Gazkul was a cold, burning star in his soul, sent a summons that echoed through the warp. It was not a request for aid, but a command to war. And from every corner of the segmentum his marshals answered. Crusading fleets that had been fighting their own lonely wars for decades, even centuries, turned their prows toward a single point of light in the void. They emerged from the Imperium like black daggers aimed at the heart of the conflict scores of battle barges and strike cruisers, their hulls scarred from 1,000 other battles, their chapels filled with warriors eager for a war worthy of their vow. It was one of the largest gatherings of Black Templars' strength since the days of the heresy, a crusade within a crusade, a singular unified expression of the chapter's purpose. Helbrecht had not come to reinforce a defensive line. He had come to purge an entire world. The Templars' arrival was not subtle. It was an apocalypse delivered from orbit. While other Imperial commanders planned orbital bombardments and established beachheads, the Black Templars opted for the most direct and savage tactic imaginable, a direct, overwhelming planetary assault into the heart of the Orc horde. The skies over Armageddon turned from grey to black as thousands of drop pods were launched. They screamed through the atmosphere, not as tools of precise insertion, but as armored battering rams, many simply crushing hundreds of orcs upon impact. They slammed into the densest concentrations of the green tide, and from their iron wombs burst forth the Emperor's wrath. Before the dust of their landing even settled, the Templars were charging chainswords roaring to life bolters, barking death. They were islands of black and white fury in a roiling ocean of green. Land Raider Crusaders' mobile fortresses bristling with hurricane bolters smashed through Orc lines, their assault ramps dropping to disgorge sword brethren and furious initiates who plunged into the melee with zealous war cries. There was no finesse, no retreat. It was a strategy of pure, focused attrition, a headlong charge into the gaping maw of the enemy, driven by the absolute belief that their faith would carry them through a storm of violence that would have broken any other army. This unwavering resilience came at a cost written in blood. The war for Armageddon was a meat grinder, and the Templars fed it with their own lives as willingly as they did the enemy's. Nowhere was this truer than in the defense of Hive Hellsreach. There the task of holding the primary spaceport against millions of orcs fell to Reclusiarch Grimaldus, a chaplain of immense faith and grim determination. For months he and his Templars stood shoulder to shoulder with the mortal soldiers of the Astra Militarum, fighting a desperate, hopeless battle in the ruins of the city. Grimaldus became a legend, a black-armored anchor in a sea of chaos. When the walls fell, he held the line in the breaches. When the temples crumbled, he consecrated the rubble with the blood of the enemy and made it a holy site to be defended to the last man. He lost over 90% of his warriors in that single siege, a sacrifice that would have crippled a lesser chapter. But for the Black Templars, it was the ultimate expression of their purpose. They had been tasked with holding a position, and so they had. The cost in lives was irrelevant. The vow was all that mattered. They left Armageddon scarred and bloodied, having suffered casualties that would take centuries to replace, but they also left it saved. Their legend was reforged in Armageddon's fires, a grim testament that in an age of darkness, victory is not won by strategy, but by the will to sacrifice everything for a single sacred oath. The fires of Armageddon were a testament to the Black Templars' resilience, but their ultimate trial, the moment their vow was tested to its absolute breaking point, came millennia earlier in the dark days of the 32nd millennium. The Imperium, complacent and rotting from within, was brought to its knees not by the machinations of chaos, but by the green tide raised to a level of apocalyptic power. An Orc empire, vast and terrifyingly sophisticated, had risen from the darkness. Led by a cabal of gigantic warlords, known collectively as the Beast, these were not the brutish savages of later eras. They were strategic geniuses commanding a technologically advanced civilization of pure war, deploying attack moons, capable of shattering planets and fielding armies that overwhelmed entire segmentums. The Imperium was not just losing, it was collapsing. Terror itself was threatened, and the High Lords of Terror were paralyzed by fear and political infighting. In this hour of supreme desperation, when the institutions of the Imperium had utterly failed, the Black Templars, alone, saw the only possible path to salvation. The High Marshal of the era, Maximus Thane, a warrior of grim vision and absolute resolve, understood that this was not a war that could be won by attrition or defense. The Beast's empire was too vast, its resources too infinite. The only way to win was to cut off the head of the snake. He issued a summons unlike any other in the chapter's history. It was not a call to a specific war zone, but a call to the end. From every crusade, fleet scattered across the galaxy, the Black Templars answered. Every single black-clad warrior, from the oldest sword brother to the youngest neophyte, converged. It was the entire strength of their brotherhood, a gathering not seen since Sigismund first led them from Terra. Their target was not a contested world or a crumbling front line. It was a suicide mission into the heart of the Beast's empire, the Orc throne world of Ulanor. This was to be the last crusade. The entire chapter, a vast armada of righteous fury, plunged deep into enemy territory. What they found at Ulanor was a planet remade into a weapon, a fortress that dwarfed even the defenses of Horus's Terra. An entire solar system had been converted into a killing field, defended by fleets that numbered in the tens of thousands and technologies that defied imperial understanding. Any other commander would have turned back. Any other force would have been shattered upon the outer defenses. But the Black Templars were not any other force. They did not slow down. They did not attempt a strategic breach. They did what they had always done, they charged. In a single apocalyptic assault, the entire Black Templar fleet threw itself at the heart of the Orc Empire. It was an act of sublime strategic insanity, a chapter-sized drop-pod assault aimed at the throat of a god. The slaughter was unimaginable. The void around Ulanor became a graveyard of black and gold vessels. Battle barges that had served for millennia were torn apart by overwhelming firepower. Strike cruisers were swatted from the sky like flies. Yet they pressed on. They slammed their surviving ships into the Orc fleet boarding enemy vessels, with chainswords roaring. They launched their remaining warriors at the surface of Ulanor itself, a desperate, hopeless charge against 1,000,000,000 odds. The Black Templars as a fighting force ceased to exist in the fires of that battle. High Marshal Thane was slain. The Sword Brethren were annihilated. The Marshals fell. The chapter was effectively destroyed, its fleets burning wreckage, its warriors slain by the thousand upon the soil of their most hated enemy. They died. Almost all of them. But in their dying, they accomplished what no other force could. Their suicidal charge was so audacious, so completely unexpected, that it drew the attention of the Beast himself and created a single momentary weakness in his otherwise impenetrable defenses. This single crack was the opening the rest of the Imperium needed. The sacrifice of the entire Black Templars chapter bought the Imperium its chance at survival with their own blood. They had made a vow to fight for the Emperor until the very end. At Ulanor they proved it. Their sacrifice became the chapter's most sacred legend, a grim reminder that their vow was not a promise of victory, but of a war fought until the last warrior had fallen. But the legend of the Black Templars is not written solely in the fire of such galaxy-defining apocalypses. The tales of Armageddon and Ulanor are the blazing stars in a constellation of unending conflict. The true substance of their eternal vow is found not in these singular moments of glory, but in the countless unremembered clashes that fill the 10 millennia between them. The real crusade is a relentless grinding war of 1,000 smaller cuts, fought on forgotten worlds and in the dark, silent spaces between the stars. It is a war without fanfare, without witnesses, and without end. Picture a lone crusading fleet, little more than a single strike cruiser, and its escorts patrolling the void of a sparsely populated sector. They are the Emperor's lonely vigil. For years they have seen nothing but dormant stars and lifeless asteroid fields. Then their astropaths detect a faint, discordant whisper from an agri world that has dutifully paid its tithes for centuries. There is no call for aid, no report of invasion. There is only a subtle wrongness, a spiritual sickness that a Templar's soul honed for 10,000 years to detect the taint of the heretic can sense. The fleet alters course. An investigation is launched, but it is not one of subtlety or intrigue. It is an investigation at the point of a bolter. The Templars who make planetfall find a populace cowed into silence, their eyes filled with a furtive fear. The investigation quickly becomes a probe, and the probe uncovers the truth in a dank cellar beneath a planetary governor's spire, a hidden shrine, profane symbols scrawled in blood, and the chanting of a forbidden name. In that instant, all pretense of investigation vanishes. Judgment is rendered. The swift and brutal purge that follows is not a battle. It is a cleansing. The Black Templars move through the Hive City not as an army, but as a righteous fire, cauterizing the infection of heresy before it can spread. By dawn, the world is silent once more. Its tithe secured, its sickness scoured from existence. The fleet moves on, leaving no record, but a pyre of the damned. Elsewhere, another patrol detects something different. Not a whisper of heresy, but the raw, unsubtle energy signatures of a Xenos fleet bombarding a world that does not appear on any Imperial chart. It is a lost world, a human colony from the dark age of technology, its people having devolved into a feudal society who know the Emperor only as a mythical sky god. They have no astropaths to cry for help, no Imperial guard to defend them. By the cold logic of the Imperium, this world does not exist. A different chapter master might see this as a distraction from their primary mission, a waste of resources on a planet that offers nothing to the wider war effort. But the Black Templars are not guided by logic. They are guided by their vow, and their vow is absolute: to punish the enemies of mankind. These aliens are preying on human beings. That is all the justification the Marshal needs. The Templars' ships fall upon the Xenos raiders with calculated fury, smashing their vessels from the sky. Then they descend to the surface, not as gentle saviors, but as terrifying black-armored gods. They hunt down and exterminate every last alien warrior, their actions a terrifying and magnificent spectacle to the primitive human inhabitants. They ask for no thanks, they give no explanation. They were not ordered here. They came because their oath demanded it. This is the daily reality of the eternal crusade, one day an extermination, the next a salvation. Both are delivered with the same righteous, unrelenting violence. An eternal war, however righteous, is not without its costs. For 10,000 years, the Black Templars have paid a heavy price for their unwavering adherence to Sigismund's vow, a price measured not only in blood and bone, but in history and sanity. Their existence as a fleet-based chapter, a brotherhood of perpetual wanderers, means they have no single impregnable vault in which to store their most sacred treasures. Their relics are carried aboard their warships, exposed to the constant risk of battle. Over the millennia, this has led to an incalculable loss. Master-crafted weapon suits of revered tactical dreadnought armor and ancient standards bearing the script of Sigismund himself have been lost to the void when a ship is crippled or destroyed in the fires of a last stand on some forgotten world. While other chapters can carefully preserve their history, the Black Templars' history is a burning candle in a gale-force wind constantly guttering its precious light, threatening to be extinguished with every new conflict. They have sacrificed a part of their own heritage to prosecute their endless war, but the greater cost is paid in the minds and souls of the warriors themselves. What is the psychological state of a being bred for a war that has no conceivable end? For a normal Space Marine victory provides a reprieve. It is a moment to return to the fortress monastery, to repair, to reflect, and to reaffirm their purpose in the quiet solitude of the chapel. For a Black Templar, there is no such respite. Victory is not a destination, it is merely a waypoint. It is a brief, breathless pause on the battlefield, a moment to reload their bolter and find their next target. Their lives are a singular, unbroken litany of violence. They are born into war, and they will die in war. There is no concept of a post-war existence, no dream of a peaceful galaxy. Peace itself would be a kind of hell for them, a state of purposelessness that would unravel their very being. This eternal conflict grinds down the soul, leaving only the hard, unyielding core of the vow. They are men who can never truly know peace, for whom the only sacrament is slaughter, and the only home is the battlefield. This is the true burden of their eternity, to be the perfect weapons of a god who demands a war that can never be won. The Black Templars do not wage their eternal war in a vacuum. The galaxy is a crowded, complex place, and their path often intersects with the other great powers of the Imperium, leading to relationships defined by respect, friction, and outright suspicion. Their most complex bond is with those who share their genetic heritage, the successor chapters of the Imperial Fists. Between the Black Templars and chapters like the Crimson Fists or the Fists Exemplar, there is an undeniable bond of blood. They are all sons of Dawn, and they recognize the same stoic courage and unyielding determination in each other's eyes. This shared ancestry fosters a deep, if often unspoken, respect. However, this brotherhood is strained by a fundamental schism in doctrine. Most of Dawn's successors are staunch adherents to the Codex Astartes. They see the Templars' fanatical deviation and their rejection of established command structures as reckless and undisciplined. The Templars in turn view their cousins' rigid adherence to Guilliman's tome as a form of weakness, a reliance on rules and fortifications that their own vow forbids. They are family, but a family divided by 10,000 years of differing philosophies on the very nature of war. If their relationship with fellow Astartes is one of respectful friction, their interactions with the holy orders of the Inquisition are often fraught with outright hostility. The Inquisition is an organization built on control secrets and the careful manipulation of imperial power. The Black Templars are a force of absolute public and uncontrollable zeal. This makes them a dangerous and unpredictable tool in the eyes of many an inquisitor. While their goals, the destruction of the heretic and the alien, often align, their methods could not be more different. An inquisitor may spend decades weaving a subtle web to entrap a single chaos cult, only to have a Black Templars crusading fleet arrive and purge the entire world with fire, destroying the guilty and the innocent alike, and with them any chance of gathering further intelligence. To the Inquisition, the Templars' uncontrolled fanaticism is a blunt instrument that can be as damaging to the imperial cause as it is to the enemy. This has led to numerous standoffs and veiled threats throughout their shared history, as two of the Imperium's most absolute factions find themselves locked in a struggle of wills. Their most crucial and perhaps most begrudging alliance is with the Adeptus Mechanicus. The Black Templars' very existence depends on their crusading fleets, and those vast ancient vessels require constant maintenance, rearmament, and repair that only the tech priests of Mars can provide. This creates a symbiotic, if uneasy, relationship. The Templars protect Forge worlds and assist explorator fleets, and in return the Mechanicus tends to their fleets. Yet a deep-seated suspicion runs through this alliance. The Templars are zealous worshippers of the God Emperor of mankind. The tech priests worship the Omnissiah, the machine god, whom they believe resides in the Emperor but is a distinct entity. To the Templars, this is teetering on the edge of heresy. They view the Mechanicus' cold logic and their veneration of technology with a wary eye, ever watchful for signs of tech heresy. They fight alongside one another out of mutual necessity, but there is no warmth, only the cold, hard contract of services rendered and debts paid. The Black Templars' rigid code of honor can make them seem isolated and uncompromising, but it is this very code that can paradoxically lead to their most profound acts of righteousness. There is no greater testament to this than the tragic tale of the Celestial Lions. A proud and noble chapter, the Lions committed the unpardonable sin of speaking a truth the Inquisition wanted buried. For this they were condemned not to an open declaration of war, but to a slow bleed execution, a shadow war of attrition. During a brutal campaign against the Orcs, the Celestial Lions found themselves suffering impossible casualties. Their apothecaries were picked off by unseen snipers. Their command structure was decapitated by suspiciously accurate artillery. Their supply lines were ambushed with uncanny precision. This was not the random chaos of an Orc war. This was the cold, methodical work of assassins. It was a purge orchestrated by a vengeful inquisitor. The greater tragedy was the silence. The Celestial Lions cried out for aid for justice, but their brother chapters remained quiet, unwilling to incur the wrath of the Inquisition for a doomed cause. The Lions were pushed to the brink of annihilation, their numbers dwindling to a mere handful of warriors making a final hopeless stand. They were alone, abandoned by the Imperium they had sworn to serve. Then the sky over the beleaguered Lions' encampment tore open, not with the silent death of sniper rounds, but with the screaming fire of drop pods black as judgment against the bruised sky. From these metal cocoons emerged not their enemies, but figures of legend, the black-armored Templars, led by a warrior whose name was already history, Reclusiarch Grimaldus, the hero of Hell's Reach. He and his contingent had not been ordered here by the High Marshal. They were not acting on any strategic imperative. They had heard the whispers of dishonor of a brother chapter of Astartes being hunted like vermin, not fought like warriors. For Grimaldus, this was an offense that could not be tolerated. The honor of the Adeptus Astartes itself was at stake. The arrival of the Black Templars was a seismic event. They did not seek to negotiate or investigate. They formed a defensive perimeter of black ceramite and roaring chainswords around the surviving Celestial Lions, their presence a silent, undeniable challenge to the unseen assassins. They dared the Inquisition to act openly. The sniping stopped. The accidents ceased. Grimaldus stood as a shield not because of a pact or an order, but because his warrior's code demanded it. This single act reveals the great paradox of the Black Templars. Their fanatical, single-minded focus on their crusade often isolates them, making them poor political allies. Yet their deep, almost primal sense of honor, specifically the honor between fellow Space Marines, can compel them to act in ways no other force would dare. They defied one of the most powerful institutions in the Imperium, not for territory or favor, but to pay a debt of honor to warriors they had never met. In that moment, the Black Templars proved that while their faith may be blind, their sense of justice, when roused, is terrifyingly clear. They became the protectors of the weak, not out of pity, but out of an unshakable respect for the title they all shared, Space Marine. For 10,000 years, the Imperium had been an empire, without an emperor, a stagnant ship adrift in a sea of chaos. Then the impossible happened. A Primarch returned. Robuta Guilliman, avenging son and Lord Commander of the Imperium, awoke from his long stasis. With him, he brought sweeping changes, a new age of reform, and a new breed of warrior, the Primaris Space Marine. For the wider Imperium, this was a moment of miraculous rebirth. But for the Black Templars, it was a moment of profound uncertainty and deep-seated suspicion. This was, after all, the author of the Codex Astartes, the very tome of limitations and restraint that their chapter had been founded in defiance of. The idea of kneeling to the man who had sought to shackle their holy crusade was to many Templars anathema. Their initial reaction was one of wary, borderline hostile distance. They were sons of Dawn, not Guilliman, and their loyalty was to the Emperor's will, as they interpreted it, not to the decrees of a long-lost uncle. Yet High Marshal Helbrecht was no fool. He was a zealot, but a pragmatic one. When Guilliman's torch-bearer fleets arrived, bringing with them the technological miracle of the Rubicon Primaris, and entire companies of these new, larger and more powerful warriors, Helbrecht saw not a theological challenge, but a potent new weapon for his crusade. He saw warriors who could run faster, fight harder, and endure more than their firstborn brethren. He saw the potential for his crusade to burn brighter and hotter than ever before. He met with these new Primaris brethren, not in a council chamber, but in the training cages and dueling rings. He tested their mettle, he gauged their strength, but most importantly, he looked into their souls. He needed to know if they possessed the same fire, the same unshakable, unquestioning faith that defined his chapter. The Primaris Marines, eager to prove their worth to these legendary crusaders, met the challenge head-on. They fought with a ferocity that matched their enhanced physiology, and prayed with a fervor that impressed even the grizzled Reclusiam. Convinced, Helbrecht made his decree. The Black Templars would accept the Primaris Marines. He himself would cross the Rubicon Primaris, a symbolic act that signaled his full acceptance of this new future. But it came with a uniquely Templar condition. These new brothers would not be segregated into new formations. They would be integrated into the existing squads paired with firstborn initiates. They would learn the Templar way of war not from a textbook, but in the heart of battle, just as every neophyte before them had. They had to earn their place not just through their strength, but by embracing the chapter's sacred creed. This pragmatism paid off. When Guilliman launched his Indomitus crusade to reclaim the lost half of the Imperium, the Black Templars did not stand aside. Rearmed and reinforced, they threw themselves into the vanguard with a fury that stunned their allies. They became one of the most zealous and effective spearheads of the new crusade, their black ships pushing deep into the darkness of Imperium Nihilus. Their ability to adapt to accept a new tool of war so long as it served the ultimate goal of purging the Emperor's enemies proved that while their faith was ancient and unchanging, their crusade was a living, breathing thing ever ready to seize a sharper sword. The dawn of the era Indomitus was marked by a scream of psychic agony that tore the galaxy in half. The Cicatrix Maledictum, the Great Rift, was a wound from which the nightmares of the warp poured forth, plunging half the Imperium into darkness. For trillions, it was an age of despair, a final dying gasp of the light. But for the Black Templars, it was not an apocalypse, it was a divine clarification. Where others saw a shattered Imperium, they saw the enemy's battle lines finally and clearly drawn. This was not a disaster to be weathered. It was a call to a crusade, on a scale they had not known for millennia. The darkness of Imperium Nihilus was not a territory to be lamented. It was a new frontier teeming with heretics to burn and blasphemies to purge. On the bridge of the Eternal Crusader, High Marshal Helbrecht stands before a hololith depicting the sundered galaxy. The angry crimson scar of the rift pulses like a malignant heart. He does not see an empire on the brink of collapse. He sees a target-rich environment. He sees a holy mandate made clearer than ever before. 10,000 years ago, Sigismund swore an oath before a dying god in a broken palace. Here, in the blood-red light of a torn galaxy, Helbrecht reaffirms that vow in the silent depths of his soul. The promise of eternal war was not a metaphor. The mission was not a relic of a bygone age. Now, more than ever, it was the only truth that mattered. The war was not over. The war had just been given a new, terrible, and glorious beginning. The vow had not faded with the ages. It had only been tempered in their fires. So we return to the fundamental question that echoes from the battlefields of the 41st millennium. What is the true purpose of the Black Templars? In a galaxy where survival itself is a victory, what is the ultimate goal of their unending self-inflicted war? The answer is as stark and uncompromising as the warriors themselves. Their mission is not to conquer. Conquest implies a desire to rule, to possess, and the Templars have sworn off all worldly dominion. Their mission is not to build. To build is to create something that must be defended, and they have rejected the very concept of the fortress. and their mission in its purest form is not even to protect. They are not guardians in the conventional sense standing watch over the Emperor's realm. They are a weapon, and a weapon's purpose is not to shield, but to strike. The true mission of the Black Templars, the engine that has driven them across 100 billion stars for 10 millennia, is a single profound act of eternal penance. They are the living embodiment of a galaxy-spanning act of contrition. They fight endlessly and without hope of reprieve because they believe their very existence is an apology for the single greatest failure in human history, the inability of the Legiones Astartes to protect the Emperor. In their theology, humanity fell from grace when Horus betrayed his oath, and the only path to redemption is through the complete and total annihilation of all that stands against the Emperor's light. Their war is their repentance, a sacrament written in blood and fire. They are the incarnation of the Emperor's rage. Not his strategic genius, not his vision for a unified humanity, but his pure, undiluted wrath at the moment of his betrayal. They are a storm of fire that has raged for 10,000 years, a cleansing flame that sweeps across the stars with the singular purpose of punishing the apostate, purging the heretic, and annihilating the alien. They do not fight for glory, for personal glory is a sin of pride. They do not fight for territory, for the material universe is fleeting. They fight for salvation, a salvation they believe can only be earned through the destruction of their enemies. For a Black Templar, every battle is a prayer. Every charge is a litany. Every enemy slain is a small measure of absolution, a single sin erased from the great debt of their collective failure. In the grim darkness of the far future, where hope is a flickering candle in a hurricane, the Black Templars do not bring hope. They do not offer the promise of a brighter tomorrow or the comfort of a peaceful future. They bring judgment. They bring the final, terrible certainty that your sins against the Emperor will be answered for. They are the debt collectors of history arriving with a sword in hand to claim what is owed. And their crusade, the penance they have chosen, will have only one of two possible conclusions. It will end when the last star has been scoured clean, when every enemy of mankind lies broken and forgotten in the dust of a dead galaxy. Or it will end when the last Black Templar falls on his sword, his black armor breached his final prayer, a curse upon the foe who struck him down. Until that day there is only the crusade. The war is all they have. The war is all they are.